Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
So he did play that story in the first segment about this Mamdani Julie Menin showdown. The city council and Julie Menin coming up big, trying to save us money while Mamdani continues to try to tax us to death. You can't live or die here anymore. I had a chance early this morning. He's up very early. He works very, very hard to catch up with one of my guys, great city council member out of Staten Island. We've got two out of Staten Island, David Carr and Frank Morano. And I asked Frank specifically about Menin and Mamdani. It looks like Frank told me last night, round 4 is about to get underway. So let me get to him. Frank, good morning, first of all. Secondly, Menin, your speaker, and Mamdani, this goes back to the budget. Mamdani claims that what Menin wants to do will force him to cut more services. I'm sure you're going to say that's ridiculous. So what is the truth about this budget slash? And does Menin, your speaker, have the upper hand on the mayor?
Yeah, Sid, thanks for having me, and it's always a treat to talk with you, and obviously your enormous and ever-growing audience.
Thank you.
On the two-part question you ask is really the fundamental question that the New York City government is facing, and it's going to determine whether or not people stay in the city. So let's talk about the actual budget, right? So what the council has been able to do in a nonpartisan and bipartisan fashion, led by the speaker and the finance chair, Linda Lee, and the staff, is close the gap without cutting major services and without raising taxes. This is really impressive. Now, the first thing the council did is we fixed the numbers first. The mayor's office is underestimating revenue and overestimating spending. I believe they're doing this because they want to raise taxes. I think they have an ideological desire to raise taxes, and they were going to massage the numbers by hook or by crook to justify raising taxes. The other thing that the council does is we cut waste, not essential services. We're not cutting cops. We're not cutting teachers, not cutting services. We're cutting all sorts of inefficiencies and bloated contracts. One example out of many is that we audit the Department of Education contracts, and doing that alone could save real money. Then our plan calls for using smarter revenue, not tax hikes. It's only about $500 million, but $500 million here, $500 million there counts for something. So this is about collecting money that's already owed or just sitting around. Example, we tap into this existing fund like the Graveyard Trust for uncollected liens. So we're totally rejecting this 9.5% property tax hike. We're totally rejecting draining the rainy day fund, and we're totally rejecting cuts to essential services. So we're managing to protect libraries, cultural institutions, and education funding. We're managing to protect mental health services and housing legal services, the programs that everyday New Yorkers actually rely on. And this is where we get to kind of the politics and the messaging of this. The cuts that we're making are pretty minor, if you can even call them cuts. I wish we were making more draconian cuts, believe me. And the mayor is out there like we're taking food out of kids' mouths and saying that we're making all these crazy cuts, which is just not true. It's not supported by the numbers. So then we get to the politics of this. Now, when I texted you yesterday, I said this was round 4 in our battle. I guess in the battle between Menin and Mamdani, technically I think it's round 6 because I think we have to actually begin before the speakership started. The first thing that the mayor did after he was elected, before he was even sworn in, was try to stop Julie Menin from getting elected. Obviously, they're not on the same place ideologically. She was the only non-progressive running. Obviously, we know a lot of his stated positions and unstated positions around Jews. I don't know that he was terribly thrilled with a Jewish candidate being elected. So the battle over the speakership, the mayor and his team were twisting arms and trying to get anybody other than Julie elected. They were trying to get the opposition to Julie to coalesce around one candidate, and they didn't even care which candidate it was. They just didn't want Julie. So the mayor lost that round. Then the first thing the mayor did once he was in office was he rescinded the previous mayor's order on anti-Semitism. Julie spoke out against that. That was round two. I guess you'd have to say the mayor won that one policy-wise because he got his way. I would argue that the speaker won it in the court of public opinion. Round three was Julie Menin did not override Mayor Adams' veto on COPA. I won't get into the weeds on this, but basically it was a totally socialist measure that the city council passed in December. Eric Adams had the wherewithal and the foresight to veto it, and we would have had to find 35 votes to override the veto. Julie did not even attempt to override the veto, which is, in my view, a very good thing. So Julie won that round. Then the mayor, right in the middle of the budget dance, right in the middle of the budget negotiation, takes the city council's top finance person, a very talented staffer named Richard Lee, a guy who probably has the $127 billion budget committed to memory, and he hires him for his administration. This would be like a rival radio show hiring Justin Ellick and Lou Ruffino combined. That's what the mayor did. So the mayor wins that round, I guess. Then, just last week, you covered it with Ina Vernikov and with David Carr, is the council passed these two so-called buffer zone bills, one on educational institutions, one on religious institutions. Religious institutions, there's no question the council wins, and the jury's still out on the educational institutions because we don't know if the mayor's going to veto that. So maybe that's a split decision. And then now here we are with round six. The mayor is saying, all right, if we can't get Albany's permission to raise taxes on the wealthy, so-called wealthy, because, again, these numbers that he's using for wealthy is upper middle class in some cases, and corporations, then we need a 9.5% property tax. We'll see who wins this one, because if the mayor wins, you're going to need, a special type of easy pass to toll all the New Yorkers that are going to be leaving town because people can afford to live or die here if the mayor gets his way in terms of taxing. But this is for all the marbles. We spend a lot of time in politics and on the radio talking about things that are not consequential to people's lives. This is very consequential.
Sounds that way. Final 60 seconds. Frank Morano, City Council member, Staten Island, one of our 5 out of 51 Republicans. Thank God we've got him there. You know, I've had my back and forths with Julie Menin, and I get very, very tough. I admit it. I've had people in this city. I'm not going to tell you their names, but a bunch who have called me and said, hey, can we sit you down with Julie? Can we figure this out? Julie does care when I go on the air and I attack her, or I attack her on Twitter. She does care. But as I mentioned in the first segment last night, we had very, very pleasant exchanges, both wishing each other a happy Passover. I wished her good luck today. So the media feels like, Menin and the mayor are good friends, and Sid wants to try to break that up. But if this is round 6 in the final 60 seconds, Frank, maybe Menin and the mayor are not such good friends.
Well, look, I think the speaker is very professional. I don't think there's any shouting behind the scenes or anything along those lines, but they just come from a very different place ideologically. Julie Menin is kind of an old school liberal Democrat, and Zohran Mamdani is, putting it politely, an extreme left socialist. So they're never going to agree on how to govern this city. And this council plan is responsible. It's not conservative by any means, but the council found billions just by using realistic numbers and cutting inefficiency. We should be celebrating that. We can have a safe city, a solvent city, and an affordable city. We just need leadership that's willing to make smart choices instead of easy ones. We have not seen that with Mayor Mamdani so far. He's only been mayor, I think, 90 days so far, and he's been much worse than I think anybody except maybe you ever expected.
Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Why is the middle class shrinking? Why are people facing an affordability crisis while marginalized individuals called informals grow in numbers? Join me as I travel the world, speaking with people living in invisibility, the leaders working to solve it, and uncovering the hard truths shaping our economy and daily reality.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.